Two things are non-negotiable: our children's health and the absolute essential importance of educating our children. To me, it's an and, not an or.
We have to open our schools. Well, I also say a decision like that is politics.
James Farr here, live from Pasadena Media Studios. Get ready for more piercing and provocative. The Conversation Live starts now. And welcome to another episode of The Conversation Live. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. Coming up today, Dr. Brian McDonald, who is the superintendent of Pasadena Unified School District. He's in the seat today, and we're going to have a critically and possibly uncomfortable conversation. Today, we want to talk about PUSD is moving towards 100% distance learning. Teachers are voicing some of their concerns over returning back into the classroom. How is this decision going to affect our students, our families, and as well as the teachers? Also, there's a growing split from teachers. Should we be opening up? Should we go 100% distance learning? Dr. McDonald will explain what his intentions are just in today's this afternoon's board meeting. But before we welcome Dr. McDonald in, let's roll in this first video and set up some context of what distance learning may look like.
Welcome tonight. A growing split on reopening schools. Teachers, parents, and school districts at odds over whether to send students back to class as virus cases climb. The divide even happening at the state and national level.
Two things are non-negotiable: our children's health and the absolute essential importance of educating our children. To me, it's an and, not an or.
We have to open our schools. Well, I also say a decision like that is politics, because we're starting to do very well in the polls.
This debate happening with just a few weeks left of summer.
The district's calling off classes, switching fully to the distance model. Just yesterday making that announcement. Now parents are wondering, some things are time sensitive. They're trying to figure out how to make sure their kids get the quality of education that they need.
People joke that I'm super mom and I do a lot, but there's certain things that are outside of my ability.
Like many parents, Christina Logan has a lot of titles, but says teacher isn't really one of them.
She might last 10, 15 minutes, and then it's like, oh, you're not the teacher, mommy. I don't want to listen to you.
Her daughter Emma, one of her 4 children in the school system, studying with an individualized education plan for her speech. Something Christina says may sound simple, but impacts so much more.
It's an issue that affects the rest of their school. Like their reading, they're being able to sound out the words.
Christina isn't the only one wondering how schools are going to accommodate kids like Emma with these circumstances. But Christina still worries what could be missing.
Really need the special attention that being at school provides, that having that instruction provides.
And welcome back. Dr. McDonald, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, James. How about you?
Oh, man, it's a difficult and different time that we're living in. But really, I want to know, how are you doing? We're going to jump into this other stuff, but I really want to check in with you. A lot is happening, but how are you and the family doing?
We're doing well. It's been quite a difficult last few months, as you know. We're both parents in the district. Although I'm the superintendent, I'm also a parent. And so, it's been very difficult trying to stay ahead of the ever-changing situation with regard to the COVID crisis, while at the same time, trying to take care of the family. So I'm very grateful to my wife, because a lot of the care for the family has fallen on her, as I'm always sequestered in my office here in meetings and so forth. So yeah, it's been difficult. Heavy is the head that wears a crown, but this is why I'm in this position, to do everything necessary for our students and our families and our staff.
I mean, because I know you don't take this lightly. I mean, it's a heavy situation.
Yes.
And, you know, in just over an hour from now, and certainly by the time that this interview has aired, the board is going to have to make a decision on whether or not to open up. You've recommended that the schools go 100% distant learning. How did you come to that conclusion? And, you know, was it political? Was it science? How are you making that decision?
Well, James, I think, as you know, we have been planning to open up in a hybrid situation, meaning a combination of face-to-face instruction as well as remote learning. But as I started to see the spike in the number of coronavirus cases, I made the decision to recommend to the board that we open up in a remote learning environment. There are two things that keep me up at night. When we were planning for a hybrid environment, the thing that kept me up was how would we provide childcare for those families who absolutely must work on the days that their children were at home learning remotely. Then the other thing that has been keeping me up as I've made the decision to go 100% online is pretty much the same thing. As a parent, we've struggled to keep our kids engaged. As you probably know, I have 4 school-age kids and 1 college kid, and they're all here. But keeping the kids focused is a difficult thing. You know, they always want to play the Xbox or some video game or the other, and so it's a constant struggle. And so for those families who absolutely have to work, I really worry about how this will affect their kids, as well as those kids who are a little bit further away from opportunity. How do we make sure that the program that we're offering is beneficial to them and will cause them to continue with their learning at a somewhat similar pace as they would have in a normal learning environment? So these are very difficult decisions.
Sure. Because I have a middle schooler soon to be starting 8th grade this year, and then I have a kinder. So I was looking forward to this day. Certainly getting one out of daycare and getting that money back in my pocket. But I'm trying to figure out what do I do with a 5-year-old who will be in a dual immersion learning program he's not immersed in. And so, what will this 100% distant learning model, have you guys flushed that out completely, or when will we learn more about that?
Not completely. When we were planning for the hybrid model, we were looking at a combination of our program, our remote learning program, as well as an established online program through the Arizona State University. So we polled our families, and we had a pretty high response rate. I think we had about 13,000 families respond out of 16,000. So very clearly that's a high response rate. And about half of the families indicated that they would prefer an online environment. So we were planning to have the remote aspect of the hybrid model as well as this other program through ASU. But now that we're in a fully online, we will be in a fully online environment pending board approval. That changes things, right? So obviously, to offer the ASU model to the entire district would be cost prohibitive. And of course, I want to make it very clear that our remote program is a quality program, and the kids would not suffer at all by having access to this program. So there are a lot of details that we still have to work out. There's a lot of teacher training that has to be done. I think we need something like 5 days of intensive training so that teachers are equipped to teach online. We will have a new learning management system that we will transition to called Canvas. They need training on that as well. They've been, for the most part, trained over the summer, but there are still some teachers who will need some additional training. So there are a lot of pieces to this that we will have to work out in the next few weeks. But
any chance of delaying the start of the school year, by a few weeks or so, and maybe putting it on the back end so that, the teachers are better prepared, and then parents have a little bit more time to make whatever adjustments they need to make?
Yeah, no, we wouldn't be able to do that because we're guided by state law, and we're guided by the California Department of Education. So that is not a decision that I think we can make at this time. And of course, this late in the game, to try to change the start of the school year would be somewhat disruptive for some of our families and our staff as well. So I don't believe that's a viable option for us at this time.
Okay, so in the blended model, students would have been on campus 2 days in cohorts, and then off doing distance learning. And so that provided some sort of a schedule for parents. How will it look now? Is it still that there'll be, distance learning for 5-6 hours a day, or will things kind of change now that we're 100% online?
Yeah, so I just looked at a possible sample schedule this morning. And I don't want to get too far ahead of the team.
Sure.
But there would be a block of time for synchronous instruction, meaning that the teacher would be interacting directly with the student via webcam. And then, of course, there'd be a block of time when the student would work on, their projects, independent work, so to speak. And that could include, and there would be a block of time, for example, for physical education, and then maybe another block of time in the afternoon for, again, synchronous instruction around other key core content areas. So, for example, in the morning, it could be English language arts and mathematics synchronously, and then in the afternoon, it could be science and social studies. Needless to say, there's some difficulties with that because, for example, conducting science experiments, that'd be hard to replicate what would happen in a lab situation. So, of course, there's that difficulty, but we have to try to provide the best possible learning environment online for the students that we can. And we're committed to working on this for the next few weeks. And what we want to do is to roll out a fully fleshed out plan by the next board meeting, which will be July the 30th.
July the 30th. Okay. Well, I want to transition because I would definitely want to talk about the teachers, and how much, consideration was given to them and kind of vice versa. Teachers unions have all kind of chimed in. And so, Jared, let's go ahead and roll in this next clip, and we'll talk with Dr. McDonald about teachers in the district when we get back on the other side.
Many teachers across the country are pushing back on plans to bring students back into the classroom. CBS's Nicole Killian reports.
The thought of returning this fall in the midst of a pandemic was too much for Christina Kerfman. The Virginia second grade instructor suffers from an autoimmune disorder and decided to retire early after almost 30 years. Dr. William Raska authored a new commentary in the Journal of Pediatrics suggesting schools can reopen safely because children are less likely to get infected.
They're less likely to transmit the virus. And that knowing that and putting together good mitigation strategies that we can open schools.
Angela worries about the trade-off.
If we go in and we get the virus and bring it back to our own families, then we've hurt the people that we love. If I don't go in, then I risk being unemployed, and it's a no-win situation.
In a joint statement, two of the nation's largest teachers unions and the American Academy of Pediatrics say that science should drive the decision to reopen, not politics. The Academy recently issued guidelines with the goal of having students physically present in schools.
And welcome back. Dr. McDonald, how much did science factor in, and how much did you guys listen to the teachers unions? How much did you listen to Governor Newsom versus President Trump? I mean, you got all of this swirling around you right now, but you had to make a decision.
Well, I certainly don't make my decisions based on politics at all. I make my decisions based on what's best for kids first and foremost, and then, of course, what's best for our staff and our families as well. So, you know, the fact of the matter is that you have to allow yourself to be guided by the science. But there's also a common sense aspect to this as well. So when the number of cases were trending down, the number of deaths were trending down, then it made sense, you know, based on what the scientists were saying, that we reopen in a hybrid situation, knowing that the students needed to be with their peers, they needed to be with their teachers. Mm-hmm. But when you start to see the number of cases spike, then I think it would be foolish to reopen in any kind of face-to-face environment, be it hybrid or fully face-to-face. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, I'll give you an illustrative example of what I think about. I think about a situation where we open up in a hybrid model and we have, let's say, 12 to 15 students in the classroom, and a student or a teacher or a staff member gets sick. Well, guess what? Now we have to quarantine that class for 14 days. They have to self-quarantine. And then anybody else that they come in contact with, for example, if those students go to the after-school program, then all of those students would have to also quarantine. Mm-hmm. That's not the kind of scenario that I want to, you know, be a part of. It's certainly, you know, you have to exercise some common sense when you're making these kinds of decisions, and especially when it relates to the possible loss of life, because a student or a staff member, like that teacher said, if they come in contact with this virus, could transmit that to an elderly family member or a person with underlying health conditions. And I think, as you know, I recently, I'm a cancer survivor. I recently, you know, had that ordeal. And so I have an underlying condition. And if it's good for me to stay at home and work from home, then it's certainly good for everybody else as well. So safety above all else.
Absolutely. But what do you say, you know, to those who are saying that the children need the emotional support, you know, the peer aspect of being in a socially learning environment? I mean, how do we supplement or support kids in that space?
And that's what makes this so difficult. I don't disagree with them at all. Like I mentioned to you, I see it here with my own kids. They desperately want to get out of the house. They desperately want to go back to school and see their friends and be with their teachers. You know, we've seen an increase in the number of adults as well as kids who are experiencing emotional crisis or mental health issues simply because they've been sequestered at home. So the ideal situation is to get kids back in school with their teachers and with their peers, but when it's safe to do so. And I simply don't believe that it's safe to do so at this time.
Okay. Let me check in. You're watching The Conversation Live. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. My guest today is Dr. Brian McDonald. Dr. McDonald is the superintendent of Pasadena Unified School District. And we're having a critical and slightly uncomfortable conversation as we look for our school district in anticipation that they will be 100% online. We've talked a little bit about what the educators' concerns are. I want to just also make sure that the district is maintaining some level of connection with the kids. And so I thought this next video might give Dr. McDonald some context, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
I had to come to pack up all your things, and I'm so sad. Today particularly was emotional being in the classroom. At the end of the day, it's more about, I feel, relationships. And I'm very passionate about what I do.
Cindy Reyes teaches second grade at the Como Leadership Academy in Fort Worth, Texas. What's the hardest part about this?
Internet connection, availability. These are only 8. I have 22.
How do we estimate this number?
We visited Como Elementary in the fall last year. 91% of the school's population is African American or Latino. 94% of these students are economically disadvantaged, and more than half are at risk.
Is there any doubt in your mind that a majority of your parents were probably having to work during this pandemic?
Absolutely. Everybody's priority right now is making sure to keep a roof over their head, feeding their children, and still trying to navigate the world of teaching and learning.
Principal Valencia Ryan's push to get 150 Chromebooks and 11 internet hotspots to families in need. And grading has changed to a pass-fail system.
I have a surprise for you.
To keep kids engaged, teachers make regular home visits. Victor Martinez stays with his mother while his dad continues to work his construction job.
Best teacher ever.
Today we're going to read a book.
We have teachers videotaping themselves actually teaching lessons and posting that, because
And that's not required, is it?
Absolutely not. And so to just be able to see my staff and all of us step up to meet the needs where we are, it's been what keeps me going.
Everybody say bye.
For CBS This Morning Saturday, Mireya Villarreal, Fort Worth, Texas.
Staying connected, Dr. McDonald. I mean, none of us have been here before, so I'm sure you probably are kind of making some of this up as you go, and that's okay. But, you know, what can we expect differently? Because everything is different. You know, my 12-year-old daughter, you know, said, well, how will grading work? I mean, how do you get that additional instruction or help? How do teachers find that space to stay connected with students?
Well, I was especially pleased to see this video because it affirms the good work that our teachers are doing. And just like the teacher in this piece that you just played, our teachers are doing similar things, and they're posting these things on Facebook as well. I see teachers reading bedtime stories to students. You know, there was a French dual language teacher that was, you know, conducting her lesson in French, you know, every day on YouTube with her kids. You know, I see principals reading stories for their students. You know, our teachers are amazing, and they're truly dedicated and hardworking. And they were doing a lot of these creative things to support our kids. There were caravans where all of the teachers and the principal would drive by students' homes and, you know, let them know that they were cared for. So all of these things have happened in our district. So I want to thank our hardworking teachers and administrators for keeping some semblance of normalcy for our kids and for our families. And I want to address the internet issue, because I think, as you know, probably about 3 to 4 years ago, we went to a one-to-one environment in terms of each student having access to a Chromebook. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that allowed us to transition very smoothly to the remote environment in March. And also through a partnership with Sprint, we were able to provide hotspots to families, especially low-income families that needed it. So, and we continue to provide support to our families.
Is that for, so say a family has multiple children in your district, is each child giving a Chromebook,
yes,
a hotspot if they need it, they don't have to share?
If they ask for it, we give it to them. We don't question as far as the hotspot is concerned, but every single student in the district has access to a Chromebook, every child.
Okay. Question came up about pre-K. Will the pre-K program still happen on campus, on campuses rather?
Yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, we still continue to provide services during the summer to our early childhood education department, and we intend to continue that as well. Come August, we're also, working now to formulate a plan to provide childcare for our families, especially those who have to work. And in the next few weeks, we'll be engaging in conversations with important community partners that could bring resources to bear on this project. Partners such as the city, the county, the Boys and Girls Club, and others.
Would they use school sites for those locations, or how does that work? Because I know that's a big concern.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't want to, say anything right now. That I don't want to get ahead of myself.
I know you're working it out, but I got to ask, will there be a cost
right.
associated with it for parents?
Well, it certainly wouldn't be a cost for low-income families.
Okay.
There might be a cost for those families that can afford it. I don't know yet. But if there's a way possible for us to provide it without having to charge a fee, then we would certainly do so. Again, this is one of the things that keep me up at night, right? For those families who must work, what will childcare look like for their kids? And we have to try to solve that issue. I'm happy to say that the mayor and the city manager have been very supportive. They want to come alongside us on this. And so, and they have come alongside us throughout the course of the past few months, especially around the grab and go meal program.
And that'll still be available, correct, throughout the year? Okay.
Absolutely. So I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to work something out so that our families will be supported.
Okay. We're getting hard up on the time. Jared is letting me know we got to get ready to get out of here. I know you have a very important meeting in just over an hour. Are you anticipating that you have full support from the board in terms of what your recommendation is?
I certainly hope so. I believe so. I've talked to board members individually, the majority of them, and they seem to be supportive of this. I think they also recognize that we have to put the safety and the health of our students and families above all else. And so I do believe that they will approve this recommendation that I'm bringing to them this afternoon, that we open up in a fully online environment.
Excellent. Final thought, I'll give you the last 15 seconds, Dr. McDonald. Is there anything you want parents to know going forward?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank our parents for their support over these months, and for all of the feedback that you've given as we've tried to plan for this new school year. It's greatly appreciated. We're truly partners, and I want you to know that we're here for you. Just reach out if you need anything, and we're easy to get a hold of. Just go on the website. My email address is there, and the email addresses of the executive leadership team. Again, thank you for your support, and we look forward to a successful school year despite the circumstances.
All right. Dr. McDonald, anytime you want to come back on and get some message out or communicate with the people, you always have an open invitation here. Like I said, I'm here to support you. You got enough people throwing darts, so that's not what we're doing. All right, you're watching The Conversation Live. I'm your host, James Farr. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. My guest today was Dr. Brian McDonald, Superintendent with Pasadena Unified School District. Until we have another opportunity to speak with you, as always, agape.